Hey there, guys. All right, and welcome back to another week of World War II. On to number 87, April 25th, 1941. Another last stand at Thermopylae, the Battle of Greece. With nothing to say here at the beginning, let's go ahead and dive right in.
So he only wants to surrender to the Germans. Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, they didn't really earn it. Boy, Mussolini's gonna hate that. All right, bye.
Specifically talking about the Greeks.
April 25th, 1941. Greece was invaded back on the 6th, but it has not been only Greek troops fighting back the German invaders. Men from Britain, Australia, and New Zealand have been there as well, but not after this week, for this week's word is evacuation.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is World War II. Last week, Yugoslavia signed an armistice with the Axis powers, and the battle for Yugoslavia was lost and over. In Greece, the Greek and Allied troops still continued to hold out against the Germans, though they had been forced to retreat time and again. There were also small actions in both North and East Africa. The fighting there continues this week. The Battle of Kombolcha Pass began in East Africa last week and ends this week. Since a frontal attack along the road is impossible, thanks to excellent Italian artillery coverage, the 1st South African Brigade takes to the hills. A successful flanking attack, supported by local Abyssinian forces, forces the Italians to retreat. Several days later, well, actually tomorrow on the 26th, the town Dessie itself will fall to a force entirely of South Africans, yielding 8,000 prisoners, 40,000 rifles, and 236 machine guns. They will then march off along the road to Amba Alagi, where General Luigi Frusci has his last Italian troops. Archie Wavell is the overall commander for the whole Middle Eastern theater of battle for the British and Commonwealth forces, but he's actually in Greece this week. In Athens on the 19th, Wavell meets with Australian Commander Thomas Blamey and British Commander Henry Wilson in charge of the expeditionary force to Greece, which is currently fighting against the invading Germans. They decide that it will likely be necessary to evacuate from Greece, but will keep fighting as long as the Greeks do so as well. On the 21st, London gives them permission to do all of this. As for the actual war, on the 19th, the 1st German SS Motorized Regiment has reached Grevena and then moves to cut off the Greek First Army's route of withdrawal southward and complete their encirclement, since the Italian army pursues the Greeks from the north. They do this the 20th after fighting at Katara Pass, 5,000 feet high in the Pindus Mountains. The next day, 223,000 Greek soldiers surrender to the SS troops. The surrender negotiations are, on Hitler's orders, kept secret from the Italians, and they include honorable terms for the Greeks in recognition for the valor with which they fought. The officers can keep their sidearms, and the soldiers are not taken prisoner, but are allowed to go to their homes after being demobilized. Actually, the Greek general, Georgios Tsolakoglu,
I'm so confused about Hitler's treatment regarding the Greeks. What?
the senior corps commander of the Greek First Army under Ioannis Pitsikas, so much does not want to give the Italians a victory they have not earned, that without any authorization, he parleys with SS leader Sepp Dietrich to surrender to the Germans alone. Benito Mussolini insists to Adolf Hitler that the Greeks also surrender to the Italians. That does not happen until the 23rd. While all this is happening, the German 30th Corps has occupied the northeastern part of Greece, and the 50th Infantry Division is at Salonika from the 19th. The 164th will secure the Aegean coast. On the 19th, the Germans enter Larissa and take the airfield, and on the 21st, they take Volos. The Germans know that the British are going to evacuate, so they've withdrawn their...
Why is that dude dangling out the end of the fucking truck?
The Germans know that the
Look at him.
British are going to evacuate, so they've withdrawn their infantry divisions who can't keep up heavy pursuit. But even the motorized divisions have problems with supply lines, roadblocks, and demolitions. On the 22nd, British military personnel and civilians begin evacuation from Greece. Now, in order for this to work, Henry Wilson has ordered a rearguard stand at Thermopylae to delay the Germans. By this day, elements of the 5th Panzer Division are attacking it though unsuccessfully. On the 23rd, King George and the Greek government are evacuated to Crete, which British Prime Minister Winston Churchill is determined to defend. On the 24th, the Germans finally mount a large attack on the Thermopylae position, but they are held off. That night, the main evacuation begins, and the Thermopylae position is abandoned, having served its purpose. The British, Australian, and New Zealander units there had made the evacuation possible with their defense. Operation Demon is the evacuation of the Allied forces. In 6 days, they will remove 50,732 men. They cannot, however, take away their heavy weapons, their trucks, or their planes. When the evacuation begins, Bulgaria invades Greece from the north, wanting to annex the Thracian coastline.
It's already what? Bulgaria, what the fuck are you doing?
So everyone's in motion. The road conditions in Greece, though, have taken their toll on the German vehicles. In 2 weeks, 35% of the vehicles are out of action because they don't have reserve tires. As the week ends, an airborne operation against the Isthmus of Corinth is about to begin. And also as the week ends, another airborne operation enters the planning stage as Adolf Hitler issues Directive 28, Operation Mercury, for the airborne invasion of Crete. Greece and Yugoslavia were invaded on the same day, but Yugoslavia was taken in under 2 weeks, while the Greeks are still holding out. There are several reasons for this. The Yugoslavian defense plans were totally unrealistic, and their armies weren't even mobilized when the invasion came. But it's also a country divided, as we know. From day one of the invasion, Slovene and Croatian nationalists saw an opportunity for secession. Some Croatian units in the army even mutinied and went over to the Germans. But really, the army leadership, which except for one division was under Serb command, has to take a lot of the blame for the lack of resistance. The German 41st Panzer Corps, for example, it was part of the drive on Belgrade, the capital, lost 1 soldier killed. Greece, on the other hand, does not only have recent experience with war, having been fighting the Italians since October, but the Greek generals have campaign experience going back to the Greco-Turkish War. They also have the 3 British Expeditionary Force divisions with modern tanks and aircraft. Having said that, the Greek defense plan is also seriously flawed. Papagos has 18 divisions from the start and kept 4 of them on the Metaxas line against Bulgaria and put the 3 BEF ones 150 kilometers back on the Ali Akman line. He counted on the Yugoslavians to protect the left flank of all of that and even open an offensive into Albania against the Italians, where the other 14 Greek divisions are. John Keegan writes, the defending forces were aligned in 3 separate positions which depended on their security on a 4th, entirely extraneous Yugoslavian force protecting their flanks. Martin van Creveld calls the disposition suicidal and notes, should the Germans succeed in breaking the Yugoslavs, rapid and total disaster was inevitable. Yugoslavia and Greece would be cut off from each other, the Metaxas and Ali Akman lines outflanked, and the Greek army in Albania attacked from the rear. Which is pretty much what happened.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Having
that sounds
said
exactly
that,
like what
there
happened.
is also the failure of the British to send the amount of troops and supplies that they had anticipated needing. The Luftwaffe closed the Suez Canal again and again to shipping with bombing and mining raids. Rommel's advance also played a decent part there, having pushed the British out of Cyrenaica. So Egypt now seems to be under threat. And according to A World at Arms, King Farouk even secretly contacted the Germans, telling them that he hoped for a German occupation of his country. And he's not the only one. But the force trying to achieve that occupation has its issues. The quick drive with limited resources made it impossible for Rommel to achieve any greater purpose. Unable to advance into Egypt without taking Tobruk, and thereby opening both the land route along the coast and the harbor for supplies, and also being unable to concentrate his forces in one push, Rommel insisted on a series of poorly planned and executed attacks on the Tobruk perimeter. Now, we saw some of this over the last 2 weeks.
So Rommel's very good at I don't know how to rephrase, like the quick stuff, going quick. But the moment Rommel is slowed down, He fucking sucks.
He's not going to get any major reinforcements anytime soon either, since the main German effort is going to come against the Soviet Union. Oh, sure, they want to push into the Near and Middle East, but after they deal with the Soviets, so maybe in the fall. Enigma intercepts do reveal that Rommel is going to be reinforced with one armored division. So on the 21st, Churchill and the British Chiefs of Staff agree to Operation Tiger, sending tank reinforcements from Britain to Egypt. This is all pretty interesting because with the impending fall of Greece and the advance in North Africa, and the British pretty desperately shuffling around troops and equipment all over the region, you might think this is a great time for the Axis to attack into the Middle East. Heck, we saw a few weeks ago the coup in Iraq that brought anti-British Rashid Ali to power. His gang is pro-Axis, and the British don't have any extra troops in the Middle East, so they brought in some Indian troops to Basra just in case the new Iraqi government openly sides with the Axis. Rashid Ali wants help from Germany and Italy, but you know, since his coup, they've kind of been full up with Greece and Yugoslavia. To their thinking, his coup was like a month too soon. But there's another thing. Most communications from Rashid to Berlin go first through the Italian legation in Baghdad because Italy has full diplomatic relations with Iraq. Germany does not. The British can read the Italian codes, though. So they've followed Rashid Ali's appeals to Germany from the start. And here's something fairly important. This Italian diplomatic presence reflected Italy's imperial ambitions in the Middle East, ambitions to which Germany, at least in theory, deferred, but about which many Iraqis had their doubts. They may not have understood the nature of National Socialist Germany and that country's attitude towards the independence of people it considered inferior, but they did have a clear idea that Mussolini saw himself as an empire builder in the Mediterranean and Near
Not good at it, though.
East.
He's bad. Pretty
and how
bad at it.
all this could be harmonized with Axis dependence on the French, whose colonial rule was hardly popular with Arab nationalists, was beyond anyone's resolution. The Iraqis, though, are not the only ones who are worried about an invasion force. On the 25th, a British military attaché traveling to Moscow by train passes signs of Joseph Stalin beefing up his preparations in case an attack against the Soviet Union comes from the west. 7 military trains between Lvov and Kiev, 4 carrying tanks and mechanical stuff, and 3 actual troops. Also this day, Stalin calls the writer Ilya Ehrenburg to tell him that his book on the fall of Paris in 1940 can now be published. It had been rejected because, in light of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, it was seen as too anti-German. But Stalin will now get it past the censors. Thing is, Stalin is really trying to not provoke the Germans. April deliveries of raw materials to Germany are the highest they've ever been since the pact was signed in 1939. 208,000 tons of grain, 90,000 tons of fuel, and even 4,000 tons of rubber. And that is the week. A week of German advances in Greece, Allied evacuations from Greece, fighting winding down in East Africa, plans for Crete, and theoretical plans for Iraq. Crete and Iraq. It just grows a bit larger and then a bit larger. With Hitler's directive, the war is going to come to Crete. And if the Germans are successful there, then what then? Putting the Suez Canal out of action would severely sabotage the British. The Axis could take the whole Mediterranean, and the Vichy French in Syria and a pro-Axis regime in Iraq could easily lead to the Axis taking the Iranian oil fields, which would ruin Britain and put the Axis just south of the Soviet oil supply around Baku. Boy, neutral Turkey has to be a bit nervous by now. But Hitler's big plans are for invading the Soviet Union, not Turkey. Well, we'll see what happens because some of his plans are pretty ad hoc. But I guess we can all agree, that this war is not going to wind down anytime soon.
Nope.
It's going to be attack after attack after attack for the foreseeable future. Volantis Athanasiou supported this episode and dedicates it to the Cyprus Regiment, a British colonial unit that saw action already in France in 1940. These Cypriot, Greek, and Turkish volunteers then went on to fight side by side in most of the British theaters of war. 100 of them fell, trying to hold back the Wehrmacht in the events we cover this week. And when they were overrun in Greece, many of them slipped out of uniform, mixed in with the local population, and joined the Greek resistance.
Nice.
If you'd like to learn more
Pretty cool.
about the situation in the Middle East,
And that was week 87 of World War II, April 25th, 1941. Another last stand at Thermopylae, though I don't think that was ever talked about. The Battle of Greece. The sun came out, so now, wow, the exposure is fucked. Another week of really nothing to talk about. Hopefully that changes, but otherwise it's just kind of like, yeah, things happened, and that's that. That's the war. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.